Hello everyone, welcome to another creative build. Today we're going to craft a sleek dark theme coffee website from scratch using just HTML and CSS. Now this is the perfect project for beginners or anyone who loves a clean UI and a good cup of design inspiration. I'm going to take you through what you are going to learn in this video. You're going to learn how to create a navigation bar. You're going to learn how to create a clean hero section with a nice gradient background image. You can see right now that this background image, you can see more of the image at the center, and the edges of the image you have this dark overlay. I'm going to teach you how to do that using radial gradients in CSS. Now when we click on our menu, it's going to scroll down to the our menu section. I also teach you how to do that in this video. You're going to learn how to create these nice responsive cards right here with this cool over effect. Now when we scroll down, we're going to see our gallery section. I'll teach you how to create this image gallery with this nice over effect right here. And also when I scroll down, I want to see the about us section. We'll learn how to create a clean and modern about us section. Also, we'll learn how to create a customer testimonials section. We'll learn how to create a contact us page, and also I'll teach you how to embed a map on your web page. Now this map is going to point anywhere, wherever your shop is, your company, your agency, or your home address. Anywhere you want this map to point to, this map is going to point to that address. Right now, this map is pointing to a location in Portland, Oregon, United States. And also, I want to teach you how to create this next contact us form right here. Okay. Now, after that, we're going to create the footer. The footer is going to have a linear gradient. You can see right now that the footer has a background image, but the background image has a darker overlay at the top, and it blends with this background. Then at the bottom, the image is going to be more obvious. Okay. I'm going to teach you how to do this with linear gradients in CSS. Not just that, we're going to take this a step further. This website is going to be fully responsive. Whatever device you view this website on is going to be fully responsive. You guys can see right now in the screen. And also, we're going to have this mobile menu right here. When we click on this mobile menu, it's going to open up our menu. Click on it again, it's going to close up our menu. We're not going to stop there. I'm also going to teach you how to view your website on all screen devices. And this is Pixel 7. I can view this on iPhone 14 Pro Max. You can see how it looks on iPhone 14. You can also view this on an iPad device. I'll use iPad mini. You can see how this website looks on an iPad device. Okay. Now this project is hosted live. I'm going to leave a link to this project in the description below so you can view this project in real time and see how it looks on your own device. If you are excited about this project, smash on the like button and leave a comment below of what HTML and CSS project you'd like to see next on this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. Let's dive into it. So we're going to be starting this project from absolute scratch. Right now, I have absolutely nothing in my index.html file. All that is inside my index.html file is this title and this link right here that is linking this index.html file to this title.css file right here. And inside this title.css file, basically I have this color variables right here that has all the colors that we're going to make use of for this project. And I also have these basic styles right here we're applying to our web page. And lastly, inside these images folder, I have all the images we're going to make use of in this project. Now, if you want to follow along with what we are doing step by step and use the exact same images we are using, I'm going to leave a link that's going to take you to my Google Drive. There you can find all the images there and download all the images so you can follow along with this project. Now close up these images folder and close up this sidebar. Now before we can start working on this project, we have to actually do two things because I want to start this project from absolute scratch. First of all, we need font or some icon in our project, and also we need Google font because I'm not really a big fan of the built-in CSS font family. So in my browser, I'm just going to type font awesome CDN and I'll search that on Google, and that's going to bring me over here. I'm going to click on the first link. I'm going to find this cdnjs.com. I'm going to click on this link right here. Now that link is going to bring me to this web page inside cdnjs.com. Now I'm going to actually copy the HTML tag for this first CDN link right here, this very first one, version 6.7.2. okay, I'll just copy the copy link tag. I'll copy this. I head back to my project. I'll just paste that in my header tag right here. And you can see that we just added font awesome CDN link to our project. So now that we've gotten font awesome CDN link to our project, now we have to actually get Google font into our project. So I'll go back to my web browser. I'm going to say font font.go. I'm going to go to this website, fonts.google.com. Okay. Now that URL is going to bring me right here. Right here, I can search for the fonts I want. I'll search for Poppins. Now you can see Poppins right here. So I'll just click on Poppins. And I'll go to Get Fonts. And you can see that it gets added to our cart right here. Okay, you can get the embedded code. I want to get the embedded code. Then you can see we have the link for HTML, but I just want to get the CSS link. So I'll just go to the CSS, which is the import. I'll copy the code. I'll head back to my project. I'll just go to my style of CSS file. I'll paste that up here and get rid of the style tag because this is a style of CSS file. We don't need the style tag for this. Now we successfully added Google Fonts to our project, but I'm not just going to make use of one font in this project. I'm going to make use of 2 fonts. Okay, so the next one is going to be Montserrat. So I want to search for that. So I'll go back to Google Fonts. I'll search for Montserrat. I'll say Montserrat Alternative. That's the one I want. And that's going to bring me right here. I'll just click on Get Fonts. I'll click on Get Embed Code. And I'll go for the CSS imports. And you can copy the code. Now I don't want to copy the script tag this time around. So I'll just copy the import statement without this style tag. I'll go down here and I'll paste that right here. Alright, cool. Now we have both our Poppins font and our Montserrat font in our project. I'll save that. Now that we've gotten everything we need, we can start working on this website. So I'll just go to my index.html file. I'll create a main tag. And this main tag is basically going to wrap around everything in the web page. Now inside this main, we're going to create our first section because everything is basically going to be wrapped around its own section. The hero section is going to have its own section. The about is going to have its own section. The gallery is going to have its own section, just like that. So the first section we're going to create is going to be for the hero section. And this is going to have a class of hero section. Okay. And inside this hero section, I'm going to create a nav tab because this is where we're going to have our navbar. Okay. This navbar is going to have a p tag that's going to have a class of logo. This picture is going to be acting as our logo for this website. Then inside this picture, I'm going to have a text called brown zip. And I'll just wrap this zip inside a span tag because we're going to add unique styles to it. Put it inside a span. I'll paste that in here. And after this picture, I'm going to have another list, which is going to have a class name of nav links. And inside this another list, I'm going to have an li tag in there. Each of these li tags is going to have an anchor tag inside them. And for now, this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere. So I'll just use hash here. Then this particular one is going to have a name of home. Then I'll just drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The second one is going to be menu. The third one is going to be gallery. The fourth one is going to be about. Then next we're going to have testimonials. And last we're going to have contacts. We're actually going to be having one more link. Now this one is going to be order. And this one is going to have its own unique style. So I'm going to add a class name to it. I'll call this order button. Button. I'll save that. I'm going to zoom this out so you can see this clearly. I'll zoom this out. Now I'm going to click on Go Live to actually run this on a web browser because I have Visual Studio Code Live Server extension installed in my Visual Studio Code. So I just click on Go Live. And that's going to open up this web page right here inside our browser. And you can see those items we just added right here, brown zip, and those links we just added. Okay. So next we're going to start applying styles to this element. Okay. First off, I want to change the background color of this body element. I want to say body. I'll give this a background color of main background, which is these variable colors right here. Okay, these colors we have up here, these are the colors I'm using. I'm using this very first one, main background, which has this hex code right here. Okay, I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to see that that background has been applied to our project. I will now have a black background. So next, I'm going to start applying styles to the hero section. So I just go back to my HTML. I'll copy this class name, this hero section class name. I'll head to my style of CSS file. I'll paste that right here. Now, first of all, we are going to give the hero section a height of 100 VH. We are basically telling the hero section to occupy 100% height of the viewport of the device you are actually viewing this website on. Okay, if you are viewing this website on a mobile phone, it's going to occupy 100
percent height of that mobile phone. If you are viewing this on a laptop, it's going to occupy 100% height of that laptop or desktop. So next, we want to give this a background because we actually want to apply a background image right here. If you notice the finished project, you're going to notice that we have an image in the background of our hero section. Okay, so that's what we want to do right now. And if you notice this image, we're having a black overlay around this image, and the image is more clearer at the center because we are making use of radial gradients, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. So I head back to my project. I'm going to add a radial gradient, and this radial gradient is going to have a circle at center, and the color we are going to use is going to be RGBA 18, 18, 18. And the first one is going to have an opacity of 0.8. Okay, I had a comma here. I'm going to copy that. I'll copy that. I'll paste that underneath here. And also, we have to add the percentage of this first one. This one is going to be for 0%. Okay, then this one is going to be for 60%, and this one is going to have an opacity of 0.9. And what we are doing is that we want to apply the radial gradient in such a way that at the middle of the background is going to have an opacity of 0.8. Okay, you can actually see through the image, but as you go wider, as you get to the edges of the background image, it's going to be darker. So that's what we are trying to do here. And for the last one, paste that color right here, and this one is going to have an opacity of 1, and it's going to be for 100%, and we don't need a comma for the last one. So after the radial gradient, we're actually going to add a background image. Now to add a background image with CSS, you make use of the URL. Now inside this, between this opening bracket and closing bracket, this is where you're going to add the path to the image. Now this image is going to be inside my images folder, and for my image, I named it footer background because the background I actually used it initially for my footer, but I later just changed the hero section to this background. Okay, so the image is actually named footer background. Okay, I'm going to save that, and when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that our background image has been applied, and you will notice this image that this image is actually darker at the edges than at the middle. If I change this very first one, the very first one to 1, you're going to notice that the background image is going to be darker at the middle now. Okay, that's why we use this radial gradient. That way it's going to be lighter at the middle. Now as it extends and get to the edges of the screen, it's going to be darker. All right, and next I'm going to add 2 properties to make this background image look way better. I add a background size, I use cover, and last I'm going to add a background position, which is going to be center. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that this actually looks really good. So now that we've gotten the background for our hero section, we can start actually working on the navigation bar. Okay, so I head back to my style of CSS file. I just scroll down here. I'm going to say .hero section. I want to target the nav tag. The nav tag. That's this nav tag we have right here. This nav tag that covers, that wraps around everything, that wraps around this P logo and this another list right here, this nav tag. Okay, I want to give this nav tag a display of flex because I want the items of the nav bar to be arranged side by side. Okay, so I'll give it a display of flex, and I want a space between them. So I'm going to add a justified content. I'll say space between them. I'll save that. Now when we go back to the web page, we notice that the brown zip is right here. It's actually black, but it's actually there. We can see it right here. It's here. Okay, and the other items, that's the links, are the right hand side. There's a space between them. Okay, and that's what the justified content space between does. It's going to add a space between the flex items. All right, cool. So next, what we want to do is that you will notice that this navigation bar is too close to the edges. This logo is too close to the edges, and these items are too close to the edges. So what we are going to do, we're going to add a padding to this nav bar at the left hand side and also at the right hand side. All right, cool. So in my style of CSS, so I'm going to say I want to add a padding top and bottom. I want a padding of 0. Left and right, I want a padding of 10%. I'll save that. Now that's going to ensure that we have a padding at the edges of this item. You can see right now the item now start around here. Okay. Yes, I want to add the height to this navigation bar. I'll give it the height of 16 pixels. I'm also going to add a border at the bottom. Border bottom. I'll say 1 pixel solid border color, which is one of our variable colors right here. You can see it up here. Border color. Okay. So I'm going to save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that we now have a border right here. You can see there the navbar actually occupies. This is where the navbar actually stops. Okay. So next, I'm going to ensure that these items, the items inside the navigation bar, are actually at the center. You can see right now that this logo, this brown strip, is actually at the top right here. We want the items of the navbar to be at the absolute center vertically. So to do that, we're going to give this nav an align items. I'll say align items. I'll give it center, and that's going to ensure that the items of the navigation bar is going to be vertically centered. You can see that brown strip is now vertically centered. So next, we can start styling the items of the navigation. But first, we're going to start with this logo right here. Okay, this text as acting as our logo. So let's do that. So in my style of CSS file, down here, I'm going to say dot logo. Now remember that we gave this p tag a class of logo. So that's the class I'm actually targeting right now. I'll give this a color of text color secondary. Okay, a font size, I'll give it 1.5 rem. Then I'll give it a font weight of 500. And lastly, I'm going to give it a font family of Montserrat or Tanit. Then the fallback value is going to be sans serif. I'll save that. Now this Montserrat font I'm using is one of the fonts we imported from Google Fonts. Okay, Montserrat alternatives. Okay, so I'll save that. I'll head back to the web page. You're going to see that font we just applied has been applied to this project, and you see that the logo, the text logo, is actually looking really good. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to apply Poppins as our general font family for this web page. So I'll head back to my web page. Then up here, I'm going to say I want the font family of the entire web page. I'll say font family. I want it to have a font family of Poppins, and the alternative, the fallback value of when we cannot import this font, is going to be sans serif. I'll save that. Go back to the web page. You're going to notice that those fonts are actually applied, and now our links are actually looking way better this way. So next, I want to style up the span tag inside this paragraph tag. Okay, so I'll just go back to my project, and here I want to say dot logo. I want to target the span tag inside this paragraph tag. I'll give it a font weight of 700, and I'll give it a color of text primary. Okay, text color primary. I'll save that, and now you can see that this logo actually looks way better this way. And with that, we're done styling this logo. So next, we can start working on the links. Okay, so next we are going to start styling these links at the right hand side. Now remember, we give these links a class of nav links. Okay, so I just copy that class from here, copy that class. I head back to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say nav, then I'll paste in that class thing right here. First of all, I want to get rid of that bullet point, so I'm going to list style. I'm going to use none. Now that's going to get rid of that annoying bullet point at the end of this anchor tags. Okay, that bullet point. And also I want to give this a display of flex, because I want the items to be arranged horizontally. Okay, you're going to notice that they are not arranged horizontally. So next, we can actually start styling the individual links. Okay, so I'll just copy this class right here. I'll paste that underneath this place. Now target the anchor tag in there. Now first of all, I want to get rid of the text decoration. So text decoration, I'm going to give it none. Now that's going to get rid of that annoying underline we have on these links. Okay, and I want to give the links a color of text secondary. And lastly, I'm going to add a padding. Top and bottom, I want them to have a padding of 10 pixels. Left and right, 20 pixels. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that these links are actually looking way better this way. They're looking really good. So next, I want to add the hover properties of these links. When you use a hover on these links, I want the color of the links to change. Okay, so I'll just go to my style of CSS file, copy this, I'll paste that underneath here, and I'm going to say on hover of this link. When someone hovers on this link, I want to change the color of the text to text color primary, which is basically white. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, I'm going to say when I hover on this link, the text is actually going to be brighter, but it now has a color of pure white. All right, cool. Now next, I want to give this last link its own unique styles. Okay, remember we give it a class name. Give it a class name of order button. Okay, so I'm going to copy that class and give this its own unique style. Go to my style of CSS file. Down here, I'm going to say nav links. I want to target this order button class. I'll give this a background color of primary color, which is one of our variable colors, and I'll give it a color of text primary. I'll save that. Go back to the web, you're going to notice that this anchor tag looks different from these other anchor tags. Okay, I also want to add the hover property to this anchor tag. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I'll just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. And when someone hovers on this anchor tag, I want it to have a border radius of 30 pixels. To ensure the effect is very smooth, I'm going to add a transition to the other button. I'll say transition border radius, the border radius property. The transition of 0.5 seconds is in out. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, when I hover on this, you can see that smooth transition right there. Okay, so now that we are done with the navbar, we can start adding the contents of the hero section. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this nav right here. I'm basically done here. Now underneath this nav, I'll create a div, and this div is going to have a class of hero content. First of all, inside this hero content, I'm going to have a h2 tag. This h2 tag is going to have this text in there: awaken your senses with every sip. And this every sip is going to be wrapped around a span because we're going to give this one a unique style. After this h2 tag, we're going to have a p tag that's going to have this paragraph in there. Then after this p tag, we're going to have an anchor tag. And this anchor tag is not going to go anywhere for now, but it's going to have this text in there: explore our menu. And I'm going to give this anchor tag a class of CTA button, which is basically call to action button. I'll format the HTML documents. I'll just save that. When I head back to the web, you can see those items we just added right here: awaken your senses with every sip, and those other text we just added right here. So next, we're going to start actually applying styles to the items of the hero section. So I'll just copy this class name right here, this hero content class. I'll copy that, head to my style.css file. So down here, I'm going to say dot hero section. Now pasting that class name right here, dot hero content. First off, I'm going to give this a height. Now I want to actually calculate the height, so I'm going to say calculate. Now I want this height to have the 100. Remember, we gave the hero section, we gave this hero section a height of 100 VH. Okay, and we added this navbar, and this navbar has a height of 60 pixels. Okay, so I want to separate. So I want to set the height of the hero content. So the height we give to the hero section minus the height of the navigation bar. Okay, so I'll scroll down. That's why I'm making use of this calculator. So I'm going to say 100 VH. I want to subtract it from the 60 pixels of the navigation bar. Then after that, I'm going to give this hero content a display of flex. I want to align the items vertically center. So I'll say align item center. Then I want to justify the content center. So justify content, I'll say center. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web, you're going to notice that these items are now actually at the center. But we have a problem. These items, we want them to be flexible. We don't want them to be arranged horizontally. We still want them to be arranged vertically. To solve this problem, we're going to say we want the flex direction to be column, and that's going to ensure that the items are still going to be in a flex container, but they are going to be arranged vertically. Next, I'm going to give this hero content a maximum width of 1200 pixels. Now what this maximum width of 1200 pixels is going to do is that for screen size that are greater than 1200 pixels, this is the maximum width this container is going to get. Okay, but when the screen size is less than 1200 pixels, I want it to have a width of 90%. I'll give each of the item a gap of 30 pixels. I'll give them a color of text color secondary. Now when I return back to the web page, I'm going to notice that this hero content container now has a maximum width of 1200 pixels. Now you see the problem we have. The container is starting around here and it's ending around here. It's not actually at the center. So we have to tell the container to be at the center. To do that, I'm going to give this container a margin. I'll give it auto. And that's going to ensure that left and right, this item is going to be positioned at the center. So next, I'm going to start styling the individual items inside the hero content container. I'll start with this h2 tag right here. Okay, so I'll just copy this right here. Copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the h2 tag in there. I'll give this h2 tag a font size. I'll give it 3.5 rem. Then I'll give it a color of text color primary. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, I notice that this h2 tag is completely styled and it looks really good. I'll just reduce the font size. I want it to be smaller. I'll use 3.3 instead. Save that. That looks way better. So next I want to target the span tag that wraps around this every zip. Remember that we wrap this every zip text inside this h2 text inside a span. Okay, so we're going to target that span. Okay, so I go to my style.css, so I just copy up to this point and I'll paste that underneath here. Now I just target the span inside this h2 tag. I'm simply just going to give it a color of primary color. Okay, I'll save that. I'll turn back to the web page. You can notice that that span tag now has its own unique style. So next we're going to style up this p tag. So I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I'll just target the p tag in there. I simply just want to give the p tag a font size of 1.2 rem. Save that. Go back to the web. You're going to notice that the font size of this p tag actually increases. Okay, actually it looks bigger. But you see the problem, you are going to notice that this paragraph tag is not actually aligned at the center. Okay, you can see right now when it ends here, it's going to start around here, it's aligned to the left. So what we are going to do, we are going to give the items or the text inside this area content a text align. I'll use center. I'll save that. And that's going to ensure that the text inside this container are always going to be at the center. So next we're going to style up this call to action button right here. Okay, remember we gave this a class name of CTA button, so I'll just copy that class name. I'll paste that underneath here, paste that right here. Now the styles I'm going to add to this call to action button is going to be a general style, so I'll just label that. I'll say this is going to be for our general styles. So any style I add below this general styles right here is going to be general style. It's going to be for the website. Okay, I also label this part, so I'll just scroll up. I'll label this part hero section so that we know that this is styles for the hero section. So hero section, I'll comment that off. I'll save that. Just scroll down. This call to action button is going to have a padding. Top and bottom is going to have a padding of 12 pixels. Left hand is going to have a padding of 15 pixels. Then it tells decoration is going to be none. We don't want any underline. It's going to have a background color of primary color and a color of test color primary. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that this button is actually styled and it's actually looking good. Now when someone hovers on this button, I actually want to add some styles to this, so I'll just copy this right here. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And when someone hovers on this button, I want to add a border radius of 30 pixels. Now to actually make this smooth, I'm going to add a transition border radius 0.5 seconds is in out. I'll save that. Return back to the web. When I hover on this, you see that smooth transition right here. And with that, I'm basically done styling the hero section. Okay, so next you have to start ensuring that this is actually fully responsive. So to actually check if your website is responsive, you're going to go to your developer tools. Now to actually get your developer tools, I just used a shortcut, but to actually get your developer tools, you right click on your web page and you're going to go to inspect, and that's going to bring you over here to your developer tools. And in your developer tools, you can check this website on different devices. Right now this web page is being viewed on iPhone 12 Pro. You can check this on iPhone 14 Pro Max. You can see, you can zoom that out. You can check this on iPad mini. You can see, you can actually see how this website looks like on different devices. You can also use responsive. Now for this responsive, you can actually increase and decrease the screen size. Okay, and you can see now when we go to small screen device, when we go back to iPhone 12 Pro, you see that this web page is highly unresponsive. Okay, so you have to start ensuring that this is responsive on all screen devices. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my code. I'll create a new file. I'll call this file responsive.css. Now this is the file I'm going to write all the media queries to actually ensure that my web page is actually responsive. Okay, now I'll just link this responsive.css to my index.html file. So I'll go back to my header. I'll just drag this down. Then up here, I'm going to say it's going to be responsive.css. Okay, and we successfully link this responsive.css to our index.html file. I'll close up this tab right here. Now inside our responsive.css, we are going to have 3 breakpoints. The first breakpoint is going to be 1024 pixels, and this one is going to be for small laptops. Okay, I'll comment that off. The second breakpoint is going to be at 768 pixels, and this one is going to be for tablets. I'll comment that off, and our last breakpoint is going to be at 600 pixels, which is basically for mobile phones. I'll also comment this off. So next, we're going to trace where our web page starts to get unresponsive. So I'll go back to my code. I'll go back to responsive, because with this responsive, I can actually increase and reduce the screen size. When I'm making use of simulator devices, you can notice that I cannot actually increase or decrease the width, because they have a fixed width. For example, this iPhone 12 has a width of 390 pixels. iPhone 14 Pro Max has a width of 230 pixels. Okay, but for this responsive, you can actually adjust and reduce the screen size as we want. So to check for breakpoints, we're going to make use of this responsive. Okay, so I'll start to reduce and check at where it starts to get unresponsive. You're going to notice that just after we go below 1024 pixels, the items of the navigation bar start to get really tight. Things really start to get tight in that navbar right there. So what I'm going to do for this navbar at that breakpoint of 1024 pixels, I'm going to reduce the padding on the left hand side and at the right hand side. Remember that in our style of CSS file, we gave this, I'm going to scroll up, we gave this nav, we gave the nav a padding left and right of 10%. So we just reduce that padding. So I'll copy this. I'll head to my responsive.css. So I'm going to create a media query down here. So I'm going to add media, max width of 1024 pixels. I'll paste that class right here. Now I'm going to give it a padding. Top and bottom, the padding is still going to remain 0 pixels. Left and right is going to reduce to 3%. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web, you're going to notice that just as this navbar goes less than 1024 pixels, you're going to notice that the padding on the left and the right hand side is going to reduce. You can see right there. When I continue to reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that the items of the navbar start to get really tight up there. Okay, before we get to 768 pixels, that's our next breakpoint. So what we are going to do, we're going to create our mobile menu at 1024 pixels. So I'll head back to my style of CSS file. I'm going to copy that nav links. I'll copy this. I'll go to my responsive.css. Now I'll paste that right here. Now what I want to do is that these links right here, these home menu gallery links right here, I want to give them a position of fixed. That way they're going to be positioned underneath this navbar right here. Okay, that's what I want to do. So let's do that. So I'll give this a position. I'll give it fixed, right of 0. I'm going to give it a top of 0. I'll give it a width of 80% and a background color of white. Remember that the text is initially white, close to white obviously, so which means if you give this a background color of white, we'll not be able to see our anchor tags anymore. So we're going to give our anchor tags a color of black. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that those links right here positioned at the top of the web page. Now we don't want these links to be positioned at the absolute top of 0. We want these links to be positioned after our navbar. Remember, our navbar has a height of 60 pixels, so we're going to position these links underneath this navbar. So instead of giving this a top of 0, I'm going to give it a top of 60 pixels. Okay, that way the links are going to start underneath this navbar. All right. So next, we don't want the links to be arranged horizontally. We want the links to be arranged vertically down. So we're going to give this flex container. Remember, we gave this nav links a display of flex. We'll give it a flex direction. I'll use column. And that's going to ensure that the links are not going to be arranged vertically down. I'm going to add a padding to this. Top and bottom, I want this to have a padding of 15 pixels. Left and right, a padding of 0. And lastly, I'll give it a height of 100 VH. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that the links now has a height of 100 VH, a background color of white, and they are now arranged vertically in a flex direction of column. So next, we're going to add styles to the individual links. Okay, so I head back to my style of CSS. So I'll give this a margin. I want each of the anchor tag to have a margin top and bottom of 10 pixels, left and right 0. And that's going to add margin between each of the link item. I'm going to align them center. So I'll give them a text align. I'll say center. I'll give them a display of block. And lastly, since they have a fixed position, I'm going to give them a Z index of 100. Okay, that way items of the web page cannot easily overlap these links. Okay, when we are scrolling through the web page. So I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these links are now positioned right here and they are looking really, really good. but you are getting to the edges. You can see these other buttons, they're actually getting to the edges. So I'll just add margin on the left and right hand side. So instead of giving this a margin 10 pixels top and bottom, 0 left and right, I just take out this 0. That way it's going to have a margin 10 pixels top, bottom, left and right. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, you can see that margin has been applied at the edges of this link right here. But we actually have a problem. When we scroll the web page, you're going to notice that our navbar start to scroll off the viewport. We don't want that. For mobile devices, we want the navbar to be fixed at the top of the web page. So let's do that. I'll scroll up here. Up here, I'm going to say nav. I want to give this navbar a position of fixed. I want it to be positioned at the top of the web page. So I'll give it a top of 0, left of 0. Then I'll give it a width of 100%. I'll give it a Z index of 100, and lastly, I'm going to give it a background color of #212121, which is basically the black color we are using for the background of our website. So I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that this navbar is now positioned at the top of the web page. When I scroll, you're going to notice that the navbar doesn't scroll off the viewport. So next, what we want to work on is that we don't want this menu to be open by default. Okay, what we want is that we want to be able to click an hamburger menu icon up here. I want to click on that hamburger menu icon. It's going to open up this menu. I want to click on it again. It's going to close it back up. So let's do that. So I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just head back to my index.html file. Just after this, on that list, I'm going to create a div. And this div is going to have a class of hamburger menu. Okay. And inside this hamburger menu, I'm going to have a span. I'll just drag that down 1, 2. I want 3 spans in there. I'll copy this class name. I'll save this file. I'll head to my style.css file. I'll scroll down. Then I'll paste that right here. First of all, this hamburger menu is going to have a cursor of pointer. And we'll paste it to 0.6. So then I'm going to style each of the span inside the hamburger menu. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the span tag in there. I'll give each of the span a height of 3 pixels, a width of 25 pixels. I'll give them a margin. Top and bottom, I'm going to have a margin of 5 pixels, left and right 0. A background color of text color primary. A border radius of 10 pixels. And lastly, I'm going to give them a display of block. Remember, they are span tags by default, they are inner level elements. So we have to give them a display of block so that we can actually see them. So I'll give them a display of block. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, notice that we have that hamburger menu icon at the top right corner of this web page. Okay. I want to go to last screen device. You're going to notice that we still have the hamburger menu icon, even though we don't need it for last screen device. So by default, we want the hamburger menu to have a display of none. So I'll give it a display of none. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that we don't have the hamburger menu icon right here. Okay. But we want this to have a display of block and be visible to the user for screens that are less than 1024 pixels. So I'll just go to my responsive.css. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a display. I'll give it block. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, I cannot see the hamburger menu icon right here. But when I go to small screen size, you can see that we can actually see it right here. When I expand the screen, you're going to notice that it's going to disappear. When I reduce, it's going to appear. Alright, cool. So next, we don't want this menu to be shown to the user by default. So we are going to add this menu. So I'll go back to my responsive.css. I'll give this a transform translate x of 100%. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that we cannot see that menu. What's happening is that the menu is in the right hand side of the web page, inside the right hand side. Okay. If I give this a transform translate x of 50%, you're going to notice that we can actually see parts of the menu. Okay, if I give it 100%, we are not going to see any part anymore because inside the right hand side. Okay, so what we want to do now is that we want to use JavaScript to actually add a class that has a transform translate x of 0%. So down here, I'm going to create another class. I'll say nav.open. Open. This is going to have a transform translate x of 0%. Now I'm going to copy this class and take this class to my nav links. I'll go to my index.html file. Now in my nav links, I'll just add that class right here. I'll paste that class right here. I'll save that. And when I go back to my web page, you're going to notice that our menu is actually open because the open menu class is actually on that nav links. So what we are going to do is that we are going to use JavaScript to actually add and remove this class. So I'll just get rid of this. So I'll scroll down to my web page. Just before this body tag, create a script tag. Now in between this opening script tag and the closing script tag, this is where we're going to write all our JavaScript for this project. So in our JavaScript, we need two items. We need a button and we also need the links. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to target the links. So inside my JavaScript, come see const links. I set it to a variable called links is equals to document dot query selector. I want to get them by their class name. So I'm going to use dot. Now copy that class name from that nav links container. Copy this class name. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll paste that right here. And next, I want to target the button. So I'm saying const menu button is equals to document dot query selector. I'll copy that menu button class name, which is this hamburger menu. I'll copy this and I'll paste that right here. Okay. So what we want to do is that we want to fire a function when someone clicks on this menu button. We want to run a function. So to do that, we're going to add an event listener to the button. So down here, I'm going to say menu button dot add event listener. Now when someone clicks on this menu button, I want to run a function called open menu. And down here, I'm going to create that function. I'm going to say function open menu. Now, all we want to do in this function is I want to add that open class we created. Remember that open class we created in our responses of CSS that has a transform translate x of 0%. I want to add that open class to the links, okay? So I'm going to say links dot class list dot add the open class. I'll save that. Now, when I go back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to add that class. I can see that our menu is actually open. It's going to add that menu open class we created. But when we click on this menu again, it's not going to close it up. That's because we only told JavaScript to open the menu. We didn't tell JavaScript to also close the menu. So down here, we're going to say, instead of add, we're going to say we want to toggle the class. Okay. So when I go back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to open it up. When I click on it again, it's going to close it up. And to actually ensure this is actually very smooth, we're going to add a transition to the nav links. So I'll go to my responsives of CSS. I'm going to add a transition. I want to add a transition for the transform property of 0.6 seconds is in out. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, when I click on this, it's going to slide out. When I click on it again, it's going to slide back in. Now let's check out this navigation bar is looking on iPhone 14 Pro Max. So I'll go to iPhone 14 Pro Max, zoom that out to 75%. And when I click on this, you can see how good this is looking for iPhone 14 Pro Max. So next, we're going to ensure that the hero content is actually responsive. That has this content in this hero section. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do in the hero section is that for screens that are less than 1024 pixels, I want to reduce the height of the hero content to about 80 view height. Remember that in our CSS, we gave this hero content. Where is that hero content? We gave this hero content a height. We subtracted the view height of the hero section and we subtracted 60 pixels. Now I want to give it a height of 80 VH. So I just copy this. I'll head to my responses of CSS and I'll just paste that underneath here. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a height of 80 VH, which is 18 viewport height. I'll go back to the web page. And when I go back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the hero section still has a height of 100 VH. That's because we also gave the hero section a height of 100 VH. When we go back to our side of CSS file and scroll up, I'm going to notice that we gave this hero section. Where is that hero section? We gave this hero section a height of 100 VH too. Okay. So what we are going to do is that we want to give this hero section a height of auto. So I'll go to my responsive.css. I think I already added that class around the hero section. I'll just copy this. I'll paste that up here. I'll just give this a height of auto. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that the entire hero section now stops around here. Okay, it now has a height of 80 VH. So next, we're going to work on ensuring that this H2 text is responsive on all screen devices, because when we start to reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that for some screen sizes, the H2 text becomes too large. Okay, so we're going to ensure it's responsive. So I'll just go to my style of CSS file. I'll look for the initial font size we gave to this H2 tag. I gave this as H2 tag. I gave this a font size of 3.3 rem. So I'll copy this. I head to my responsiveness of CSS. Now at 1024 pixels, first of all, I'll just scroll down and paste that underneath here. First of all, at 1024 pixels, I want to give this a font size. I'll use about 2.8 rem. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and you see this actually looks better. When we increase the screen size, you'll notice that when it goes above 124 pixels, the font size of the, you see it right there, the font size of the H1 tag is going to increase. When we reduce, it's going to reduce when it gets less than 1024 pixels. Then it's actually way better. But for mobile device, when we go to mobile device, when I go to iPhone 12 Pro, I'm going to notice that the H2 text is still kind of large for iPhone 12 Pro. So we have to actually add a style for it for mobile devices too. So I'll also go to my mobile device. I have not created a media query yet, so I'll say add media, max width. This time I'm going to use 600 pixels. And also I'll do the same thing for tablets. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll change this to 768 pixels. Okay, so I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. For tablets, I want this to have a font size of about 2.5 rem. I'll save that. Now when I go to the web page, when I go to responsive, when I start to reduce, you notice that when it goes less than 768 pixels, the font size is going to reduce. You can see it right there. Okay, see that breakpoint right there. Now I'm going to copy this. This time I'm going to paste it for styles that are only for mobile phones. I'll paste that right here. For mobile phones, I want this to have a font size of 1.8 rem. I'll save that. When I go back to the web page, when I go to iPhone 12 Pro, I'm going to notice that the H2 text is looking really, really good. So finally, we have to ensure that the P tag is actually responsive too. When we go to tab, let me go to iPad mini. When I go to iPad mini, you're going to notice that it actually looks good for iPad mini and for small laptops. It looks really good. So we don't really have to add styles for the paragraph tag for iPads. Okay, we only have to apply styles for mobile phone. When we go back to iPhone 12, we're going to notice that it's kind of large for iPhone 12 Pro. Okay, so you have to just reduce it a little bit so ensure it looks good for mobile devices. Remember, we gave the P tag a font size of 1.2 rem. Okay, so I just copy this and just reduce that to about 1 rem for mobile devices, for mobile phones. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a font size of 1 rem. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web, you're going to see that it actually looks smaller for mobile devices. And with that, we are basically done with the hero section. We can now start working on the our menu section. Now for the our menu section, we're going to have this header right here, our menu. I'm going to have these cards right here with this really cool over effect. So let's start working on this. So I go back to my index.html file, just wrap up everything inside this section. I'm done here. I'll wrap up everything here. Underneath this section, I'll create another section. And this section is going to have a class of menu section. And first of all, inside this menu section, I want to create a div. And this div is going to have a class of header. Okay. And inside this div, I'm going to have a h2 tag that's going to say our menu. The first part of this h2 tag, which is our, is going to be wrapped inside a span because I want to give it its own unique style. Put it inside a span. Okay. Now I'm going to actually add styles to this header right here. So I'll copy this class name. I'll head to my style of CSS file. Now this header is going to be a general style because we are going to use this style for other sections. So I'll paste that underneath my general style right here. I'll give this a margin, top and bottom. I want it to have a margin of 40 pixels, left and right a margin of 0. I'll give it a text align of center and a color of text color primary. Then I'll target the h2 target the dot header h2. I'll give this a font size of 2 rem. And lastly, I'll target the span inside this header. I'll paste that underneath here. The span is inside the h2 tag. I'll say h2. Then I'll target the span in there. I'll give this span a color of primary color. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and notice that we have that menu right here. Let me take this to desktop. And notice that we have that our menu header right here.
So next we're going to start working on the cards for our menu section. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this right here, this div. I'll wrap up this div. Underneath here, I'm going to create a div. This div is going to have a class of menu container. And inside this menu container, I'm going to have a div that's going to represent each of the menu cards. So I just give this a class of card. Then I'll copy this. I'll drag this down multiple times. 1, 2. Okay, I'll save that. Now I want to apply styles to this menu container. So I just copy this menu container class. I head to my style.css file. I'll scroll down. Now here I'm going to say dot menu section. Then I'll target that class name we just copied right here. I'll give this menu container a maximum width of 1200 pixels. I'll give it a width of 90%. That means that for large screens that the width of the screen is greater than 1200 pixels, it's going to have a maximum width of 1200 pixels, this container. But for screens that are less than 1200 pixels in width, that's for mobile phones and tablets, it's going to have a width of 90%. Okay, I'll give it a margin of auto to ensure the items are always at the center. I'll give it a display of grid and a grid template columns of repeats, auto, fit, min, max, 300 pixels, and one fraction, 1 FR. After that, I'm going to add a gap between the items. I add a gap of 20 pixels. Now I'm going to style the individual cards. Okay, so I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I just target the card class we created. That is this card class, each of the card class. Okay, each of the card class. I just target that. So I'm going to say dot card. I'll give this card a border of 1 pixels solid border color. Okay, that's one of our variable colors that's called border color. I'll give it that color. I'll give it a box shadow of 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, RGBA, 255, 255, 255, then opacity of 0.02. Add a comma. Add another one of 0, 8 pixels, 20 pixels, and the color RGBA is still going to be 255, 255, 255, but the opacity this time is going to be 0.04. I'll give this card a border radius of 10 pixels. And what we are simply doing is that we are trying to get the structure of this menu container and the cards. Okay, we're trying to get the structure. Okay, so for now I'm going to give this a height of 300 pixels. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web, you're going to notice that we have those cards right here with that border we added and the box shadow we also added. I want to go to small screen device. You're going to notice that these cards are fully responsive. Okay, that's because of this grid template calling property we added to this menu container. Okay, it's going to ensure that the cards are going to have a minimum width of 300 pixels, but if there's not enough space to occupy 2 cards, the next card is going to go on, it's going to fold underneath and it's going to occupy 1 FR. That's a maximum of 1 FR then. So I'll just go back to desktop. I'll get rid of these other cards right here. I'll get rid of these other 2 cards. I want to actually add the contents of these cards. Okay, inside this card I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class of card header, and inside this card header we're going to have 2 items. First of all, we're going to have an image. This image is going to go into the images folder. It's going to access coffee1.jpg, and the alt text is going to be menu FM. Then after that we'll have an h3 tag. This particular h3 tag is simply going to say latte. After this card header, I'll create a p tag underneath it. This p tag is simply going to have this paragraph text in it. After this p tag, I'll create another div, and this div is going to have a class of card footer, which is going to wrap around everything in the footer of the card, like the bottom of the card. Okay, at the bottom of the card, we're going to have a span that's going to say $5.99. Then there's going to be $1 at the back, so I'll say $59.99. Then after that, I'm going to add a button, and this button is simply going to say order now. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that those items we just added is now inside the web page. Okay, you can see that image we just added right here. Alright, cool. So let's start actually applying styles to these elements. Okay, so I'll go back to my code. I'll go to my style.css file, scroll down. Now I'm going to say dot menu section dot menu container dot card header. I want to give this card header a display. I use grid. I'll place the items at the center. Place items, I want them at the center. And also I want a gap of 15 pixels between the items. Then I'll target the image. I'll copy this. Target the image inside this card header. For the image, I'll give it a height of 100 pixels, a width of 100 pixels. Object fit, I'm going to give it cover. And lastly, I'm going to give it a border radius of 50% because I want it to be actually circular. Next, I'm going to target the H3 tag inside that card header. Okay, so I'll paste that underneath here. I'll target the H3 in there. For the H3 tag, I want to have a color of text color primary, a font weight 500, then a font size. I'm going to give it 1.5 rem. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that we've styled this image. You can see this image and this latte text right here. Okay, but the items of the card are too close to the edges, so we have to add a padding around this card. So I'll go back to my card. I'll give this card container, I'll give this card a padding of 20 pixels, and that's going to add a padding of 20 pixels around all the items inside this card. Okay, so next we're going to style this paragraph tag. So I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the paragraph tag. I'll give this a margin, top and bottom. I want to have a margin of 15 pixels, left and right a margin of 0. I'll give it a color of text color secondary. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that this text actually looks okay. So next, I'm going to style these items that are at the bottom of the menu card. Okay, so I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now just target the card footer. Okay, I'll give this a display. I'll give it flex. I'll give it an align items of center. I want the items to be vertically centered, so align items of center. Then justify content. I want space between the items, so I'm going to say space between. I want them to have a color of text color primary. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that these 59.99 is at the left hand side, while these other 9 is at the right hand side. Okay, that's what the justify content space between is going to do. It's going to have space between the items since they are in a flex container. Now this span tag is already looking okay. We don't have to add more styles to this, but this both we have to add style to it. Remember, we created a general class in our style.css file. Where's our general class? We created a general styles, and I'm writing styles under my general styles. I'm not supposed to do that. I'm just going to cut this. I'll cut this off from underneath here. I'll cut this off. I'll paste that up here. And I'll call this one styles for the menu section, because I like to actually ensure I label out all my styles. I'll say this one is the styles for menu section. Okay, so everything below this menu section is the styles for the menu section. Remember, we created a general style right here called call to action button. So we're just going to copy these styles and add that style to our button. I'll copy that, save this. I'll head to my index.html file. I'll paste that class right here. I'll give it a class of call to action button. And when I go back to the web page, you're going to notice that that style has been applied to this button right here. Due to the fact that this is not actually a link, we have border around this button, so we just add more styles to that CTA button. First of all, we are going to give this CTA button a cursor of pointer. Then we're going to give it a border of none. We don't want this class applied to a button. We don't want the button to have a border, so I'll say border of none. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that that border is gone from this button. Okay, now that we have done with the items inside this card, so we're just going to add the rest card. Okay, so I'll go to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this card container, wrap it up, then I'll copy it and drag it down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that we now have 6 cards, and we have a problem. Our card is overflowing. That's because we give this card a fixed height property and it's starting to overflow. Remember, we'll give the card where's that style for the card? We give the card a height of 300 pixels. Okay, so it's starting to overflow. So what we are going to do, we're going to give it a height of auto. By default, the height of a container is auto, so we'll just take off the fixed height. So by default, it's going to have a height of auto. Save that. When I go back to the web, you're going to notice that it's going to have a height of auto. So now we can start updating the items inside the card. Okay, so I'll go back to my index.html file. Just go back to my index.html file. The first one, we're going to leave the first one as it is. We're going to leave the first one. Then we start updating from the second card. This one is going to be coffee2.jpg. The type of coffee is going to be flat white. Then the paragraph tag, I'll just paste that right here. All right. Then the next one is going to be coffee3.jpg. The name is going to be Americano. Then for the paragraph tag, I'll just paste that right here at a full stop. Then the next one is going to be coffee4.jpg. The name is going to be Mocha. Then for the paragraph tag, I'll just paste that right here. Then for the next one, it's going to be coffee5.jpg. The image is going to be coffee5.jpg. The name is going to be code brew. And for the paragraph tag, I'll just paste that right here. Cool. And for the last one, open this up. For the last one is going to be coffee6.jpg. The name of this one is going to be cappuccino. And the paragraph tag is going to be this right here. Okay, I'll save that. I'm gonna head back to the web. You're gonna notice that these cards have been updated, okay, and they're looking really, really good. And also when we go to for small screen device, when we go to our developer tools, you're gonna notice that they look good on small screen devices too. I'm going to check this on tablet. I'll go to Nest Hub. For tablets, large tablets, they look okay. Check that on iPad mini. Looks okay too. And check it on iPhone 14 Pro Max. Looks great too. Alright, cool. So let's start working on the next section, which is going to be the gallery section. This gallery section right here, that we're going to have the gallery of image and this cool over effect right here. So let's start working on that. So I go back to my index.html file. I just wrap up everything in our menu section. I just go to our menu section, I wrap everything up. Then down here, create another section. This section is going to have a class of gallery section. Inside this gallery section, first of all, I'm going to have the header. So I just copy the header from this menu section. Close that section back up. I'll paste that header right here. Instead of our menu, it's going to be our gallery. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web. You're going to notice that header right here, our gallery. So I'm going to start adding the contents of this gallery section, okay? So I'll go to my index.html file. After this header div, I'll create another div. I'll give this div a class of gallery. And inside this div, I'm going to have a div that's going to have a class of gallery item. And inside each of these gallery items, I'm going to have an image in there. So I use an img tag. And this particular one is going to go into the images folder and it's going to access gallery1.jpg. And the author is going to be gallery image. Okay? Gallery is spelled with 2L, not 3L. Take off 1. So I just copy this and drag this down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now we have 6 of them. This second one is going to be gallery2.jpg. The third one is going to be gallery3.jpg. And the fourth one, gallery4.jpg. gallery5.jpg. And the last one, gallery6.jpg. Alright, cool. I'll save that. Now, obviously, when we go back to the web page, we're going to have this humongous image in the web page. Because that's because we've not applied styles to this gallery section. And I did not add a hover property to this card. Okay, when we hover on this card, this our menu card, I want to add a hover property. So let's quickly do that. I'll just go to my style of CSS file. I'll scroll up. There's that card. I'll copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here.
And when someone hovers on it, I want to add a property to it. So I just copy this box shadow right here. I want to increase the box shadow. I'll just copy that. I'll paste that right here. Paste that right here. I'll increase this one to 4 pixels, 8 pixels. Then the opacity will become 0.05. Then I increase this one to 10 pixels, 30 pixels, and the opacity becomes 0.08. I'll save that. When I go back to the web, you're going to notice that when we hover on this card, we see that hover effect right there. So let's tie up these items inside this gallery, okay? So I'll just copy this right here. I'll copy this class name we give to this gallery section class name. I'll head to my style of CSS file. Sorry, my style of CSS file. I'll scroll down. Underneath here, I'll just paste that styles right here. First of all, I'll just comment this off so we know that these are the styles for our gallery section. Now here, I'll paste that again. I want to target the gallery class, okay? I'll give this a display of grid. The grid template column is going to be similar with the one we give to this menu card, okay? So I'll just copy this. I'll scroll down. I'll paste that right here. Each of the items are going to have a gap of 20 pixels, and the gallery container is going to have a maximum width of 1200 pixels and a width of 90%. Then I'll give it a margin of auto to ensure it's always at the center margin of auto. Now you have to target each of the gallery item. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now remember that inside our gallery container, we have this gallery items container that wraps around each images. Okay, so we're going to target this gallery item container. Okay, so I'll copy that. I'll go to my style of CSS. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a border radius of 12 pixels. Also, I'll give it an overflow of hidden. I'm going to actually add a box shadow of the first box shadow we give to this card. So I'll copy this box shadow. I'll head back down. I'll paste that right here. And I'm going to target the image inside this gallery item. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the image in there. And since we already gave the container a grid display, this gallery item is already in a grid display. We just have to tell the image inside the gallery item to occupy 100% width and 100% height. So I'll give it a width of 100%. I'll give it a height of 100%. I'll give it an object fit. I'll use cover. When I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice that these gallery images are actually styled and they look better this way. So next, we're going to add that cool hover effect on these images. Okay, so I just go to my style of CSS. So I'm going to copy this. Add an hover effect to the gallery item. So I'm going to say on hover. I want to add a transform scale. I want it to scale by 1.02. And that's going to ensure that when you hover on the image is going to zoom out a little. Okay, that's what the transform scale is going to do. It's going to ensure the image zooms out a little bit. Also, I want to add a box shadow. So I'm going to add the same box shadow we added to our menu card when we hovered on it, which is this box shadow right here. I'll copy this. I'll scroll down and I'll paste that right here. Okay. Now also when we hover on this gallery item, we also want the image to zoom out a bit. So I'll copy this. I'm going to say on hover of this, I want to add style to the image tag inside this gallery item container. I want the image to have a transform scale of 1.04. I'll save that. Now when I return back to the web, you're going to see when I hover on this image, you can see that hover effect right there. But it's actually very fast, so we have to add a transition to it. Okay. First of all, for the gallery item, I'll add a transition. I'm going to add a transition for the box shadow property first. It's going to be 0.3 seconds ease. I'm going to add another transition for the transform property, which is also going to be 0.3 seconds ease. Okay. I also add transition to the image itself. So add a transition to the image transition. Remember that we added a hover effect to the image of transform. Okay, so we're going to have a transform transition on the image. So transform 0.4 seconds is. I'll save that. I'm going to go back to the web page. I'm going to notice that smooth hover effect on this image really smooth. And with that, we are basically done with our gallery section. Let's check if this is responsive. So I'll just check if this is responsive. I'll scroll down and this looks really responsive. It looks really good. I'll check on iPhone 12 Pro. Looks okay. Looks really good. So next we're going to start working on the About Us section. So I go back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up everything in this gallery section, wrap up everything here. Then underneath this gallery section, I'll create another section. And this section is going to have a class of About section. And inside this About section, I'm going to have that header right there. Let me copy that header from this gallery section. Close this back up. I'll paste that inside this About section. Paste that right here. And instead of our gallery, is going to say About Us. After this header, I want to create another div. And this div is going to have a class of About container. And inside this About container, I'm going to have two divs, which is going to represent the two containers inside this About Us. The left hand container that is going to contain the image, and the right hand container is going to contain the text and the call to action button. So this first one, I'm going to give it a class of About left. And inside this first one, we're going to have an image in there. And this image is going to go into the images folder, and we're going to go in for the about image.jpg. Okay, now the alt text of this image is going to be About Us image. Then after this About left, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of About right. Okay, now this About file is going to have a h3 tag in there, and this h3 tag is going to have this text in there: crafting, coughing, creating, moment. And after that, we're going to have a p tag. This p tag is going to have this paragraph text in there. After this p tag, we're going to have another p tag, and the second p tag is going to have this paragraph text in it. After that, I'm going to create a div, and this div is going to have a class of About call to action. And inside this div, I'm going to have an anchor tag that's not going to go anywhere. Inside this, we're going to have learn more, and this anchor tag is going to have a class of CTA button. That's that general style CTA button class we created. Okay, I'll just format the document, save that, head back to my web page, and you're going to notice those items we just added. I see that About Us header we just added, and the other items we just added. So let's start actually applying styles to this element. So I'll copy this About container, copy this. I'll go to my style.css file. I'll scroll down, and this is going to be here. I'm going to write the styles for my About section. So I want the About section. I'll comment that off. Then down here, I'll say dot About section. Dot, I'll paste that About container class we copied. And this container is going to have a maximum width 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and a margin of auto. We'll give this a display of grid, a grid template columns of one file, because we want the left hand div container and the right hand div container to occupy equal space, 50-50. So I'm going to give it one file. After that, I'm going to add a gap of 15 pixels between the items inside this About container. I'll place the items at the center, place item center. Then I'm going to add a background color of secondary background. And also I'll quickly style the image. Okay, so I just copy this, I'll paste this down here. I'm going to copy the image container class. Now the image is inside this About left, so I'll copy this class. I write to my style.css, so I'll just paste that right here. I want to target the image inside this About left. I've already told the container to have a grid template column of one fr, okay, which means we just have to tell the image to occupy 100% width of its parent container. So I'll give the image a width of 100%. I'll give it a height of 500 pixels. Object feet, I'm going to use cover. And lastly, add a border radius to the image of 10 pixels. I also add that border radius to the About container. Just copy that and paste that right here. Save that. Now we'll head back to the web page. You're going to notice that this container is actually styled and it's actually looking
really good. But we actually have to add more styles. You're going to notice that the image is getting to the edges. Okay, we don't want that. We don't want the image to get to the edge. We want to add a padding around this about container. So what we are going to do, we're going to add a padding. Say padding. Add a padding of 10 pixels. I'll save that. When I go back to the web, you're going to notice that that padding has been applied. I will now have a padding around this image, and the image is actually looking good. So next we can focus on styling the content at the right hand side of the about us container. So I'm going to copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Instead of the about left, I'm going to target the about right. Okay, I'll give this a padding. I want this to have a padding top and bottom of 0, left to right 15 pixels. I'll save that. And that's going to add a padding on the left hand side and the right hand side of this about right container. Okay, now we can start styling the individual items in this about right container. I'll start with this H3 test. I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the H3 tag. I'll give this H3 tag a font size of 1.8 rem. I'll give it a color of text color primary. I'll give it a font weight of 500, and lastly I'll give it a margin bottom because I want a margin between the H2 tag and the paragraph tag underneath it. I'll give it a margin bottom of 10 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to see that this H3 text is looking better. Now we can focus on styling the paragraph tags. So I'll go back there. I'll copy this. I'll paste this underneath here. Now just target the paragraph tag in there. I'll give them a font size of 1.1 rem. I'll give them a color of text color secondary. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to see that they are looking better, but I want a line height in this paragraph tag so that there's going to be a space between each of the line of the paragraph. So I'm going to give this a line height. I'll use 30 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice that there's now a space between each of the line of the paragraph. Now we have two paragraphs here. We have this first paragraph and the second paragraph. I want to add a margin between them. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll target the first of type. The first of type, first paragraph tag in that container. I'll give this a margin bottom of 25 pixels. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to see that there's now a margin between these two paragraph tags. So next, I want to style the container that wraps around this button. We already give this button that general style we created, that CTA button class. So we have to style the container that wraps around it. That's this container that has about CTA. Okay, so I'm going to add styles to that. So I'll just copy this right here. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll target that class. Copy that class from my HTML about call to action. Now the button is already styled, so I just want to add margin to this container. Okay, so I'll say margin top and bottom. I want a margin of 20 pixels, left and right 0. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the web, you're going to see there's now a margin around this learn more button at the top and at the bottom. And with that, we're done styling this about us section. Now I have to ensure this is actually responsive. So I'm going to go to my developer tools. I'll go to responsive. Now when I start to reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that before we get to 1024 pixels, things really start to get tight in that about us. Okay, the about us start to really compress. So what we are going to do is that at 1024 pixels, we are going to ensure that these items are arranged vertically. Okay, remember we give it a display of grid. We give this a where's that container? We give the container a display of grid and a grid template columns of 1FR, 1FR. So for screens that are less than 1024 pixels, we just use one fraction. Okay, so I'll copy this. I'll head to my responsive of CSS file. I'll paste that underneath this place. I'll paste that right here. I'm going to give this a grid template columns of 1FR. I'll save that, and just notice that I'm repeating styles up here. I'm actually repeating styles up here. This one is meant to be one style. I'm adding styles to the nav tag twice. I'll just paste that right here and get rid of the second nav style. I'll save that. Now when I go back to my web here, you're going to notice that when we go less than 1024 pixels, the items are going to be arranged vertically, as you can see right now. And also when the items are arranged vertically, I want to give this image a height of auto. Remember, we give the image a height. To give the image a height of 500 pixels. So for screens that are less than 1024 pixels, I want to give the image a height of auto. So I'll just copy that.
I'll go to my responsive of CSS. I'll scroll down. Underneath this place, I'll just paste that right here. I'll give the image a height of auto. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that the image now has a height of auto. When we reduce the screen, the image is going to respond to the screen size because it has a height of auto. So the image is actually responsive and the abats container is responsive. Now we have to ensure that this H3 tag is actually responsive. When we go to mobile device, when I go to iPhone 12 Pro, you're going to notice that this H3 text is actually very, very large. Okay, so we have to add some styles for it for mobile device. So I'll just go to my style of CSS. So I'll copy this H3 tag. Remember, we'll give this H3 tag a font size of 1.8 frames. So I'll just reduce that font size for mobile devices. As for mobile phones, I'll scroll down. I'll paste that right here. I'll reduce the font size to about 1.5 rem. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to have the font size is actually smaller for mobile devices. And also, I'm going to reduce the padding we get for this about us right. Okay, so I'll go to my style of CSS file. Remember, I'll give this about right a padding top and bottom 0, left and right 15 pixels. So I'll just copy this. I'll head to my style of CSS file. Go to my responsive of CSS file. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a padding top and bottom. I'm still going to have a padding of 0, but left and right I want to have a padding of 5 pixels. I'll save that. Yeah, that's way better. The text now occupies close to the edges right here. Also, we have to reduce the font size of this paragraph tag. So I'll go to my style of CSS file, copy this right here. It starts for the paragraph tag, copy that. I'll go to my responsive of CSS. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a font size of 0.9 rem. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to see that the font size is actually smaller for mobile devices. And this is actually looking really good for mobile device. And we also want to reduce the font size of this header. Okay, remember this header is a general style. I'll just go for the font size of this header. This header right here. I'll just copy the header H2. I'll head to my responsive of CSS. I'll paste that right here. I want to add the font size of 1.5 rem, so I'll just paste that right here so that it's going to share the styles with this H3 tag. So I'll paste that right here. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice that the about us header text actually reducing font size, and for mobile phones this website is looking really good. So with that, we are done with the about us section. We can start working on the testimonial section. For the testimonial section, I'm simply going to have 3 cards right here that's going to house the testimonies. Head to menus of HTML. I just wrap up this section right here. We are done with this section. After this section, I'll create another section. This section is going to have a class of testimonials section. And inside this testimonial section, first of all, we're going to have the header. So I'll just copy the header from here. I'll copy this header. I'll close this up. Head to my testimonial section. Paste that right here. Now this is going to be customers review. Save that. Head back to the web page. You can see that header we just added customers review. Okay, so after that, I'm going to create a div, and this div is going to have a class of testimonials container. And inside this testimonials container, we have another div that's going to have a class of testimonial card. And each of these testimonial cards is going to have an image in there. And the image is going to go into the images folder and going to access. For the first one is going to be person1.jpg. And the auth text is simply going to say person. After that, I'm going to have a p tag. And this first one is simply going to say Emily Thompson. Then we have another p tag. The second one is going to say London, United Kingdom. That's the location of this person. After that, I'll create a div. And this div is going to have a class of stars. Inside this div, I'm going to have an icon. This icon is going to have a class of star, which is going to represent a star. Copy that. I'll drag that down multiple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last one is going to be half star, half aught. Okay, it's going to represent half a star. And after this stars container, I'm going to have a p tag. And this particular p tag is going to be the p tag with the testimonial. So I'll just paste that right here. Then I'll copy that. Just close this up, this testimonial card. I'll copy this. I'll drag this down twice. 1, 2. Okay. And for the second one, the image is going to be person2.jpg. The name is going to be Sofia Martinez. The location is going to be San Francisco, USA. And for the testimonial, I'll just take this off. I'll paste that right here. All right. And for the third card, it's going to have an image of person 3. The name is going to be Yuna Park. The location is going to be South Korea. And the paragraph tag, I'll just get rid of this one. Get rid of this. I'll paste that right here. Okay. And this one is going to be full star. So I just take off this half star out. I'll save that. And I head back to the web page. You're going to notice those items we just added right here in the web page. Okay. So now we can start applying styles to this item. So I'm going to go to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll copy this testimonial containers class. I'll copy this. I'll head to my style of CSS file. I'll go up underneath my about section styles. I'll create a style here. First of all, I want to say testimonials. Testimonials section. And I'll comment that out so that we know this is the style of testimonial section. And now I'm going to say dot testimonial section. I'll paste that class name right here. Not testimonial, testimonials. I'll give this a max width of 1200 pixels, a width of 90%, and a margin of auto. I'll give it a display of grid and a grid template columns of repeat, auto, fit, min, max, 300 pixels, 1 FR. I add a gap between the items of 20 pixels. Okay. So now I'm going to style the individual cards. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now copy that class name, testimonial card class name. I'll copy that. I'll paste that right here. I'll give each of the card a background of secondary background, a padding, top and bottom. I want them to have a padding of 30 pixels, left and right 20 pixels, a border radius of 10 pixels. I'll give all the text a text align or center. So next I want to style the image, so I just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I just target the image inside this container. I'll give the image a width of 90 pixels, a height of 90 pixels, a border radius of 15%. I want the image to be circular, 50%. Object fit, I'll use cover. I add a border to this image, a border of 5 pixels, solid, text color primary. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to see that those styles have been applied and our cards are looking good. I'll just quickly increase the margin between this image and this text. Okay, so I'll give the image a margin bottom. I'll use 5 pixels. I'll save that. I just want a slight margin at the bottom right there. Okay, and now I'm going to start styling the items of this card. I'll start with the paragraph tags. Okay, so I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I want all the p tags to have a font size of 0.9 rem. I want them to have a color of text color secondary. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. I can see that all the paragraph text are now actually styled. But I want to add unique style to the very first paragraph tag. That's the paragraph tag that represents the name. Okay, so I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. In fact, I'll just I already copied. I'll paste that right here. Now I'll say P first of type. I'll give this a font size of 1.3 rem, a font width of 600, and lastly color of text color primary. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and this one has its own unique style. Okay, then next we'll style up the stars. So I'll go to my style of CSS file. I'll paste that right here again. I'll target the stars container. Remember that inside this testimonial card we have this stars container right here. So I'll just copy this. I head to my style of CSS, so I'll just paste that right here. I'll give the stars a margin top and bottom of 25 pixels, left and right of 0, a font size of 1.1 rem, and lastly a color of this hair's color right here. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and these stars are completely styled and they are looking really good. And with that, we are done with the testimonial section. We'll head to small screen device. I'll check this on tablet. Let me use iPad mini. I'm going to notice that it looks good on iPad mini. When we check this on iPhone 12 Pro, it looks good on iPhone 12 Pro. So I'll check this on Pixel 7. Sorry, it looks good on Pixel 7, which means it's fully responsive on all screen devices. So next, we're going to start working on the contact us section, and in the contact us section, we're going to have this map right here, and we're going to have this input right here. Okay, so I go to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up everything in the testimonial section, wrap up everything here. Under this testimonial section, I'll create another section. And this section is going to have a class of contacts section. First of all, you have to get that header. So I'll just copy this. I'll close this back up, paste that inside this section. Then instead of customers review, it's going to be contact us. Format the document. Underneath this header div, I'll create another div, and this is going to have a class of contact container. And inside this div, I'm going to have two divs. The first one is going to have a class of map container, which is going to be the container that's going to wrap around our map. Then the next one is going to have a class of contact form. So first of all, I'm going to work on this map container. I'll actually teach you how to add a map to a web page. I'll go to my browser, I'll create a new tab. I'm going to go to google.com/maps. I'll click on enter. That's going to bring me right here. We can see a map right here. Okay, now originally this map is going to point to your current location. Okay, but you can actually add the location you want the map to point to. And in our case, I'll just say that I want this map to point to this location right here. You can actually type your location right here, any location you are, where you are, US, India, Nigeria, wherever country you are, or whatever location. You can type your location here. It's going to bring it out on Google Maps. In my case, I just want to use this location right here, Southeast Maple Avenue, Portland, Oregon, USA. So I'll click on that. It's going to bring me to that location on Google Map right here. And to actually copy the HTML code, we're going to go to share. Then we're going to go to embed a map. Then we'll just copy the HTML right here, copy HTML. Okay. Then we'll head back to our code. Then we'll just paste that code. We just copy that HTML code inside our map container right here. I'll save that. Now when I go back to my project, you're going to notice that when I scroll down, we have a map right here that is pointing to a location in Portland, Oregon. So next, we're going to add the items of the contact form. So I'll go back to my index.html file. First of all, we're going to have a h3 tag in there that's going to have this text get in touch. And after that, we're going to have a form. And this form is not going to be performing any action because we are not working on the back end. We just want to create the UI of the form. So I'll get rid of this. I'll give this form a class of form container. Inside this form, we'll have a div. This div is going to have a class of input container. And inside this input container div, I'm going to have an input in there. This is going to have a type of text, and the placeholder is simply going to say your name. I'll copy that and I'll drag that down. The next one is going to have a placeholder of your email. Then I'll copy that again and drag that down. This one is going to be a test area. I'll get rid of the ID and the name. And it's going to have a placeholder of your message. After this, I'm going to have another div. This one is going to have a class of button container. Then inside this button container, I'm going to have a button that's going to have a class of CTA button, call to action button. That's that class we created in our style of CSS file. And this button is simply going to say send message. I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, I'm going to notice all those items are just at the right here. We have our map, we have that get in touch test right here, we have our inputs and our button right here. The button is already started. We already created this class in our style.css file. So now I want to start applying styles to these elements. So I'll go to my style.css file. First of all, I'll copy this class, this contact section class. I'll copy this. I'll head to my style.css file. I'll scroll down, paste that right here. I'll just comment that at first. So that will know that this is the styles for our contact section. Then I'll use place, I'll paste that class right here. I'll give this contact section a padding, top and bottom. I want a padding of 60 pixels, left and right a padding of 0. Yes, I'm going to target the contact container. So I'll go back there, I'll copy this class right here, I'll copy this class right here. I'll head back to my style CSS file. Down here, I'm going to see dot contact section. I'll paste that contact container right here. I'll give this a display of grid, a grid template columns of 1.5 FL and 1 FL. Now what I'm doing right here is that you know that the map, we are going to have the map before the input. So I'm telling the map container to occupy 1.5 fraction and the input container to occupy 1 fraction. And that is going to ensure that when you check the finished project, you're going to notice that this map container actually occupies a larger width than this input. Okay, so it's occupying 1.5 fraction, while this input is going to occupy 1 fraction. All right, I'll give the container a maximum width of 1200 pixels. For small screens, a width of 90%. And also I'll give it a margin of auto. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice those items are now arranged in a grid display. So next we're going to start styling the contact form, okay, and the items inside the contact form. First of all, I'm going to apply some styles to the contact form. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. Now I'll copy the class from my index of the HTML file, this contact form class. I'll copy this contact form. I'll paste that right here. I want this contact form to have a background color of text of secondary background. I'll save that. When I head back, you'll notice that this contact form now has its own unique background color. Next, we're going to start this h3 tag right here, okay? So I'll go back to my style.css, so I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the h3 tag in there. I'll give this h3 tag a color of text color primary. I'll give it a font size of 2M. A margin, top and bottom, I want a margin of 20 pixels, left and right a margin of 0. Then the text align of center. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice that the h3 text is actually styled and it looks very, very good this way. So next we're going to style these inputs, okay? So I just copy this. I paste that underneath this. Now first of all, I want to target the inputs container. So I'll just copy that class right here. That is a container that wraps around each of the inputs. I'll copy that. I'll paste that right here. I want to give this a width of 80%. I simply just want the inputs container to occupy 18% of the contact form, okay? Then I'll give it a margin of auto. Next, I'll target the input inside this input container. I'll copy that. I'll paste that underneath here. And I'll just target the input in there. I'll give this a width of 100%. I want this to occupy 100% of the input container, okay? Margin, I'll give it auto. Margin bottom, I'm going to give it 20 pixels. I'll give it a height of 50 pixels. And a padding, top and bottom of 0, left and right of 15 pixels. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that this input is actually styled. But you notice that the text area is not actually styled. The styles are not being applied to the text area. Okay. Now the reason for that is because we are targeting the input, not the text area. So we also have to target the text area. So I'll just copy this. I'll paste it right here. I'll just add a comma so that it's going to target both the text area and the input. So I'll just format this document. Now I'll just change this one to text area. That way it's going to target both the input and the text area. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that it now actually applied those styles we just added to the text area as well. Now I don't want these inputs to be white. Okay, I want the input to be transparent and I don't want any outline on the input. So I'm going to get rid of the outline. So I'll say outline none. Then I want the background of this input to be transparent. And I'm going to add a border of 1 pixel solid. This border color right here, I'm going to use this hash color as our border color for the input. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. You're going to notice that this input is actually looking really good. But you see, I have to add one more style to it. So when you type inside this input, you're going to notice that the text is actually black. So what we are going to do, just give this a color of text color primary. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to notice that when we type on this, it's actually now white. All right, cool. So next, you're going to notice that the text area, the styles are actually applied, but the text area still looks weird. It's not really looking the best. So we have to apply unique styles to the text area. So I just copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'm going to add padding to the text area. Padding, top and bottom, I want 10 pixels, left and right 15 pixels. I want it to have a height of 150 pixels. And lastly, I want it to have a resize of none. And this resize of none is going to ensure that we cannot actually do this with this text area. I cannot actually resize the text area, okay? So I'll save that. When I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that I'll just refresh the web page. You're going to notice that this text area is now actually styled and it looks better than the way it was looking initially. The height has increased and that resize, you can actually resize it anymore. I can actually type on it and it's looking really good. So lastly, I'll just add styles to the placeholders, okay? So I'll copy this. I'll paste that down here. I'll say colon, the placeholder. I want the placeholder to have a color of this hex color right here. I also have to add this text to our input. So I'll just copy this. Add a comma. I'll paste that right here. Then I'm going to say for the placeholder for the input. Now just format the document. That way they are going to share the styles, okay? Now next, I want to add some styles to the container that wraps around the send message button. So I head back to my index.html file. I'll just copy this class file, this button container class. I'll copy this. I head to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say .contact section, .contact container, .contact form. Now paste that class right here, button container. I'll give this a width of 80%. And also, I'm going to give it a margin. Top and bottom, I want this button container to have a margin of 10 pixels, left and right, a margin of auto. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to see that button is now completely styled and it looks really good. But the button is too close to the bottom right here. I'm just going to add a margin bottom to this button container. So I'll give this a margin bottom. I'll just use 40 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to see that the margin between the button and this button right here actually increases. Now you're going to notice that the form and the map don't have similar heights. Their heights actually varies. We don't want that. We want them to have similar heights. So we're going to take off the fixed heights that came with the map, okay, and give the map a height and width of 100%. So I'll head back to my index.html file. I'll just scroll up and get rid of the fixed heights here. I'll get rid of it. I'll give it 100%. And also for the width, I'm going to give it 100%. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, the map is now going to occupy 100% width and height. But now the map is too close to the input, so I want to add a gap between these items. Remember, we gave this item a display of grid in our style of CSS file. We gave this a display of grid, so just add a gap between them. So I'll give them a gap of 20 pixels. I'll save that. Now we turn back to the web page. You're going to see that this looks really good. And with that, we are done actually styling the content form. Now we have to ensure this is responsive. So we're going to go to our developer tools. I'll just go to responsive and start to check if it's responsive. I'll just expand this, scroll all the way down. Now, when we start to reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that they start to really compress, okay? So what I'm going to do at 1024 pixels, we're just going to ensure that these items of this contact container are actually arranged horizontally, okay? Remember, we gave it a grid column template of 1.5 FR, 1 FR. So we'll just give it a grid template columns of 1 FR. That's going to ensure that we're going to have one item in a row. So I'll just copy this. I'll go to my responsive of CSS. I'll scroll up for 10,024 pixels. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a grid template columns of 1 FR. I'll save that. when it breaks, you're going to notice that we now have another problem. When I take this to iPhone 12 Pro, you notice that the height of the map is actually very small. Now, the reason for that is because this input container, based on the fact that they are in the same row, is going to have the height of this input container, because the container that wraps around these two items, which is the form container, has height of auto by default, which means that container is going to have the height of the items inside it. So when we make this thing column, the map is going to have its own height. Okay, since we gave it a width and height of 100%, now by default this is the height that actually comes with the map. So when we now take this to mobile device and we arrange them in their own row, the map is not going to have that height, this kind of height. Okay, it's going to actually reduce in height. Now what we are going to do is that we're going to ensure that this map has a fixed height. So instead of using 100% as the height, I'll just use 500 instead. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. You're going to see that it has a height of 500. Also, when we go to small screen device, I'll just scroll down. You're going to notice that it still has that height of 500. And this actually looks completely responsive. And with that, we are basically done with the contact section. Okay, you can start now working on the footer. So I head back to my index.html file. I'll just wrap up this contact section. I'll create a footer tag. And this footer tag is going to wrap around everything in our footer. Okay, inside this footer tag, I'll create a div. This div is going to have a class or footer container. Inside this footer container, we're going to have 3 items in there. We're going to have this container, also this container. So I'll create the first one. This is going to have a class or footer about. And the first item we're going to add for this is going to be our logo. So I just go to my use section. I'll copy that p tag. I'll copy this. I'll close this back up. And I'll just paste that inside this footer about container right here. After that, we're going to have a p tag. That's going to have this text in there. And after this p tag, we're going to have a div. This div is going to have a class or social icons. And inside these social icons, we're going to have a div. This div is going to have a class of icon container. And inside this icon container, I'm going to have an anchor tag. The anchor tag is not going to go anywhere. And each of these anchor tags is going to have an icon in them. The first icon is going to have a class of fab, Facebook, F. I'll just copy this. I'll drag this down multiple times. 1, 2, 3. The second one is going to be fab, X, Twitter. The fourth one is going to be fab, Instagram. And the last one is going to be fab, LinkedIn. After this footer about, I'm going to have another div. After this footer about, I have another div. This div is going to have a class of quick links. And inside this div, first of all, I'm going to have a h3 tag. This h3 tag is going to say quick links. And after this h3 tag, I'm going to have an unordered list. And this unordered list is going to have similar li tags as our navigation bar. So I just go up. I'll open up this whole section, copy these li tags right here. I'll close this back up, head to our footer. I'll just paste that right here and I'll get rid of the last one. I don't want this one, the footer. After this quick links div, I'll create another div. This div is going to have a class of footer contacts. In the first of all, I'm going to have a h3 tag. This h3 tag is simply going to say contacts. After this h3 tag, I'm going to have a p tag. This p tag is going to have this text in there. After that, I have another p tag. That's going to have this text in there, Portland, Oregon. After that, I'm going to have another p tag, which is going to say email. And I'll just use a random email, say brownseep@gmail.com. Spell that brown correctly. And after that, I have another p tag. This p tag is going to say phone. I'm going to have this random phone number right here. And after the footer container, I'm going to have another div underneath this footer container. I have another div here. This div is going to have a class of footer bottom. And inside this footer button, I'm simply going to have a p tag. I'm simply going to have this text in there: copyright 2025 Egbon Tech YouTube channel. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, I'll just scroll down. You can see those items we just added for our footer right here. Okay, so next we have to start applying styles to the footer. First of all, I want to add that background image to the footer, so I'll go back to my style.css file. I'll just scroll down here. Just before this, our general style. Also, this is going to be styles for our footer. I'll say footer right here, and I'll comment that off. Then underneath this place, this is where we're going to write all the styles for our footer. First of all, I'm going to add a background image to the footer, which is going to be a linear gradient. So I'm going to say background. It's going to have a linear gradient. The first color is going to be RGBA 18, 18, 18. Opacity of 1. Then the second color is going to be RGBA 18, 18, 18, and 0.8. Then after that, we're going to add the actual background image. To do that in CSS, remember, we're going to make use of the URL. Then in between this opening and closing bracket, we're going to add the path to the image. And this image is inside the images folder. Then we want to access footer. Where is that footer? Footer background.jpg. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that we have that background right here. And that linear gradient we added is going to ensure that, remember, we gave the linear gradient. The first color, we give it an opacity of 1, and the second color, as the last color, we give it an opacity of 0.8. So it's going to add a linear gradient in such a way that the upper part of our footer is going to be black and it's going to blend with this black background right here, while the bottom part is going to have an opacity of 0.8, which is going to actually show the image more. All right, so I'll add more styles to the footer. So I'm going to give this a background position. I'll give it center. Then background size, I'll give it cover. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, the image actually looks really good this way. So next, I want to give all the text inside this footer a color of text color secondary. I'm going to add a padding. The padding at the top of this footer is going to be 80 pixels. Left hand is going to be 20 pixels. Then bottom is going to be 20 pixels. I'll save that. When we head back to the web page, you're going to notice that a padding has been applied at the top and at the bottom of this footer. Okay. So next, we have to start styling the footer container. So I'll go back to my index.html file. Just head back there, I'll scroll up. I'll copy this footer container class. I'll go back to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say footer. I'll paste that footer container class right here. I'm going to give this footer a maximum width of 1000 pixels. I'll give it a margin of auto to ensure it's always at the center. Margin of auto. I'll give it a display. I'll give it grid. I'll give it a grid template columns of repeat, auto, fit, min, max, 200 pixels, 1 file. And lastly, I'm going to give it a gap. I'll give it 40 pixels. Save that. Head back to the web. You're going to start the items of this footer container are now arranged in a grid display. So what I'm going to work on is I'm going to work on this first part of this footer container. Okay. So I'll target that class. I'll go to my index.html file. So I'll copy this class name right here. I'll head to my style.css file. Down here, I'm going to say footer container. I'll paste that class name right here. I want to target the p tag inside this footer about, and specifically I want the last p tag, so I want to say last of type. I'll give this a margin. Top and bottom, I want to have a margin of 15 pixels. Left and right, I want to have a margin of 0. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice that this paragraph tag is not styled, but I want to actually increase the line height, so I just give it a line height. I'll give it 30 pixels. Save that. And this actually looks better. Next, I'm going to target these icons, okay? So I head back to my index.html file. I'll copy this social icons container. I'll copy this. I head back there. I'll just paste this right here. I'll just copy this. I'll paste it at the back of this social icon class. I want to give these social icons a display. I give it flex. Then I'm going to add a gap of 20 pixels between the icons. Save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice the icons are now in the flex container. There's actually gap between each of the icon. Okay, so now I'm going to target the icon container that wraps around these icons. Remember that these icons have a div that wraps around them, this div of icon container. So I want to target the icon container. My style of CSS file, copy up to this point. I'll copy that. I'll paste that underneath here. Now to target the icon container, so I'll copy that class name from my index.html file. Then I'll just paste that right here. Okay, I'll give this icon container a border of 1 pixel solid. This is color right here. I'll give it a height of 40 pixels. I'll give it a width of 40 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web page. You're going to notice those icons now have a border around them, but the icons are not at the center, so we have to fix that. So I'll give the icon container a display of grid, and I'll place all the items inside this items container. Place items, I'll place them at the center. And that's going to ensure that the icons are actually at the center of their container. So next you have to target each of the icons. Okay, so I'll go back to my style of CSS, so I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the icon in there. I'll give this a font size of 1.2 rem, and I'll give it a color of text color secondary. Then I'll copy that again. I want to add a hover property on it. When someone hovers on the icon, when someone hovers on this icon, not the icon per se, the icon container, when someone hovers on the icon container, I want to add styles to the icon. I want to give the icon a color of text color primary, which is white. I'll save that. Now when I go back to the footer, you're going to notice that when I hover on this icon, you're going to see that I'm going to have a color of white when I hover on this icon container. Okay, so we are done with this first part. Let's work on these quick links. Okay, first of all, I'll target this H3 right here. So I'll go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this up to this point. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I just target that class. What's the name of that class? Quick links class. I'll copy this class. I'll paste that right here. I'll just target the H3. Sorry. I'll paste that right here and I'll target the H3 in there. I'll give this H3 a color of text color primary. A font weight, I'm going to give it 500. I'll give it a font size of 1.3 rem. And lastly, a margin bottom of 15 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web, you're going to notice this H3 tag is now actually styled. So next, I'm going to style these links. Okay, so I go back to my style of CSS file. I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the unordered list in there. I'll give this a list style. I'll give it none. That's going to get rid of that bullet point that's inside of this list. Okay, I'll give it another display. I'll give it grid. I'm going to add a gap between the items, a gap of 15 pixels. Save that. Next, I'll style the anchor tag inside this unordered list. So I'll just copy up to this point. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just target the anchor tag in there. First of all, I'll give this anchor tag a text decoration of none to get rid of that annoying underline. Then I'll give them a color of text color secondary. Then I'll copy this again. I'll paste that underneath here. I'm going to add a hover property to them. When someone hovers on this, I want to add a color of text color primary. Now head back to the web page. You see that these links are actually styled. When I hover on this link, you see that they have a color of white. So lastly, we're going to target this other side. Okay, and style the last part of this footer container. So I'll copy this. I'll paste that underneath here. I'll just go copy that class name from my index.html file, which is this footer contacts. That holds the details for the contact. So I'll just go to my style of CSS file, paste that right here. I'll give this a display of grid, and also I'll give it a gap of 15 pixels. I'll save that. Head back to the web. You're going to see that these items are actually styled now. And finally, I'm going to style the items at the footer bottom, which is this Copyright 2025 Igbo Tech YouTube channel. So let's do that. Down here, I'm going to see footer. I'll copy that class name. I'll just copy this footer bottom class name. I'll head back to my style of CSS file. I'll just paste that right here. I'll give this a text align. I'll give it center. I'll give it a color of text color secondary. A font size of 0.9 rem. And lastly, margin. Top and bottom, I want to have a margin of 25 pixels. Left and right, a margin of 0. Save that. Head back to the web page. You can notice that this is actually styled. And with that, we are done with the footer. We just have to ensure if it's responsive. So I'll go to my developer tools, scroll down. I'll scroll down. And the footer actually looks responsive for mobile devices. Remember, we'll give it a display of grid. All we have to do is just reduce the font size of the paragraph tag to ensure that it looks good on mobile device, okay? So I'll go to my style of CSS file. First of all, I'll use the font size of this icon right here. I'll just copy this. I'll head to my responsives of CSS. Go for mobile devices. I'll paste that right here. I'll give this a font size of 0.9 rem. And also, I just want to give all the paragraph tag inside that footer. I'll say footer P. All the paragraph tag, I also want to give them a font size of 0.9 rem. Save that. Head back to the web. You're going to notice that this looks really good for mobile devices. Now let's just check if everything looks okay for mobile device. Everything looks really good for mobile devices up to this point. And we've not worked on the navigation, so we're going to work on that next. And the P tag for this menu cards, it looks too large for mobile device. I'll just reduce that slightly a bit. Go back to my style of CSS and try to look for the style for that paragraph tag. Scroll all the way up to our menu section. I think this is this P tag right here. I'll copy this. I'll go to my responsives of CSS. I'll paste that right here because I want it to have a font size of 0.9 rem. I'll paste that right here. And these ones also have a font size of 0.9 rem. So instead of me writing this text twice, I'll just cut this off, get rid of this, and I'll paste that right here at the comma. I'll paste that right here. That way these three classes are going to share that styles. Okay, font size of 0.9 rem. I'll save that. I'll head back, and it actually looks better. And we are basically done with the website. So all we have to do is just add that navigation. Okay, so when we click on home, it's going to scroll to home. We'll click on menu, it's going to scroll to menu. Okay, let's do that. So I'll go to my index.html file. Alright, to my index.html file. Just go to my navigation. Go to my navigation. My navigation is inside this zero section. So I'll say this is going to be hashtag home. This is going to be a hashtag hash menu. This is going to be a hash gallery. This is going to be hash about. This is going to be hash testimonials. And lastly, this is going to be hash contacts. Okay. Now, when we click on these links, we want to actually tell the HTML document the section to show to us. Okay. To do that, we're going to give these sections a unique ID. So this section is going to have an ID of home. And this ID has to match with the ID we added in our links. Okay. Home. So for the next one, just wrap this up. Next one is going to be for our menu section. So give this an ID. I'll say menu. Then for the next one, give it an ID of gallery. Next one is going to have an ID of about. The next one will have an ID of testimonials. The next one is going to have an ID of contacts. And I think that's all. So we also have to add that. Remember, we have a link in our hero section that goes to the menu. Okay, explore our menu. So we have to add that here to say hash menu. Then we just copy these links right here. We also have to add it to our footer. So I'll just close this back up. I'll scroll down to the footer. You know, we have links in our footer. So I'll just get rid of these links without any. Paste that right here. I'll save that. Now, when I head back to the web page, when I click on testimonials, it's going to take me to the testimonial section. When I click on menu, it's going to take me to the menu section. But the navigation is not actually smooth, so we just had to add a little style to our HTML document. So I'll go to my style of CSS and scroll up. After this body tag, I'll say HTML. I want the scroll behavior. I want it to be smooth. I'll save that. I head back to the web page now, scroll back up, click on gallery, it's going to scroll down. See that smooth scroll behavior, click on testimonials, it's going to scroll down. Now if you also click on this on our footer, click on testimonials, it's going to take us to the testimonial section. Click on home, it's going to take us back to the home page. And with that, we are basically done building this website. Now if you enjoy this project, smash on the like button and leave a comment on what HTML and CSS project you'd like to see next on this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next project we're going to build together on this channel. I'll see you in the next video.